everybody. Welcome to Cube Huddle, y'all. So my name is Adriana Villela. I am from Toronto. Yay! I've been here since 1997, so I guess that makes me like a dinosaur. I am a CNCF ambassador and HashiCorp ambassador, and I have a tech blog, and I do talks. I have a podcast called Geeking Out. My day job is a senior staff developer advocate, where I spend most of my time doing observability things, and I'm actually working on the Open Telemetry project as a maintainer of the OTel end user SIG. By night, I climb rocks for fun, and my superpowers include getting shit done, learning things super fast, and capybaras. They're not a superpower, but they make me happy, and I guess that makes me more productive, so it's a superpower.
Hi everyone, my name's Denise. I am an engineering manager at HashiCorp. You may have heard a thing about us in the news this past week, so for now I work for HashiCorp. My superpowers include herding humans. I'm pretty sure I was a border collie in a past life, which is very handy when you're an engineering manager. I also sketchnote / illustrate / doodle sometimes. And I will always say yes to an invite to go to karaoke. Maybe not today, but in the future. If you ask me to go to karaoke, I will say yes.
Hi everyone, I'm Diana. A full-time job, I'm a developer advocate at Vonage. And I totally thought I put it in there. That just tells you how great of a developer advocate I am. Like, I didn't make this slide, but if I did, I'd be working on it on the plane. But superpower, I initially put that I can eat oysters, and yeah, y'all can find me at Diana's Oyster on Twitter. Most of my things are Diana's Oyster. For a while, I think people didn't even know I had a last name. And so they thought my last, like literally I saw people who had my name in their contacts as Diana Soyster. Yeah.
I do? Oh, this works. That's awesome. Hazel.
You can tell we rehearsed. So I'm Hazel. I am the principal platform architect at a company called DataVant, which does a lot of health logistics things, complicated things, and compliance woes. My superpowers would be probably, being an infrastructure witch. I helped accidentally hackaderm the Mastodon instance into existence. I like to see things from different perspectives, and I can do a backflip. And you can find me everywhere on the internet. I'm extremely online.
That's me. My hair changes often, as you can see. Yeah, I am Renata Rocha. You pronounce the R like that because I was born in Brazil and we speak Portuguese, not Spanish. And I am friends with Adriana. That's how I ended up in this panel because we like to complain about being a woman in technology all day long. That's literally all day long. You should see our chats. I am literally in between jobs. I quit my job 2 weeks ago, and I am about to start a new job in June. So maybe if you check my LinkedIn, you're going to see where I'm going. I'm not talking about it yet because I'm that kind of person, but that's it. My superpowers are the cloud. I think it's amazing. I can talk about the cloud for hours. I have been working in technology since 1997. I have so many opinions about it. I'd like to automate everything. I like cycling long distances. I can go from Toronto to Niagara Falls on a bike, and I think it's beautiful. And I am obsessed with cats. I have my cat, and I take pictures of whatever cats I see along on my way when I'm on a bike. You can find me at renata.org, or you can scan the QR code, or you can find me on LinkedIn at LinkedIn/Renata Rocha, my full name. Yeah, that's it.
All right, so let's get this party started. It just occurred to me, do we have the audio connected for this? Because I have a little video clip to play. We're good? Yay. Okay.
Black startups are not getting funding. People like Elon Musk and DHH from Basecamp, we've made it cool publicly to not give a fuck about diversity, equity, inclusion.
So we included this clip. This is actually a clip from my podcast, Geeking Out, because this is actually what gave me the idea for this panel. The fact that, like, what's up with DEI being out of fashion? Like, it's still very much a problem. Like, we still have like minority groups being marginalized, and I think it's important to have these conversations, especially in light of these interestingly tumultuous political times. So let's start out first with our first topic for our panelists, the token D in DEI. So panelists, starting with Hazel, when did you notice that you were the D in DEI?
So can someone without a mask repeat the question?
So when did you notice that you were the D in DEI?
When did I notice I was a D in diversity? So that was interesting because one of the things about diversity is that it's so intersectional. I've been very many flavors of diversity over the years, and so I was born deaf as one thing. And so that is something that I noticed pretty much immediately because kids are cruel and evil. And so if you're normal, you're kind of okay, but if you're not normal, it's just anyway. And so that was the first time I was sort of that diversity. And I used to joke that I was everyone's favorite diversity hire because, you get a white dude in tech, but it's a diverse hire because they're deaf. And now. So yes.
For me, I'm pretty much have always been the only woman in my team, and yeah, I see some people nodding in the audience, right? Yeah, and since I came to Canada, which was 14 years ago, it also helps that I'm an immigrant and I'm Latina, so they can check like 3 boxes at the same time. They are hiring an immigrant, they are hiring a Latina, and she's also a woman. Hooray for diversity. And it never changes. Like, it's amazing. Like, they say, oh, we are hiring diverse people, but it's always me checking all those boxes at the same time. And I'm working with all these men, and they never make my life easier for being the diverse person. And people are laughing, which means it's still happening. So, yeah.
I guess for me, I was hired under conditions that, like, a lot of the teams that I did work for, they did try to account for like diversity, inclusion, all that, and I'm currently on a team that supports that, like, even though there are fewer women. But I think in the past I've been in a scenario where I also was the only woman on the team, and I definitely don't think that they were like very like specific on that aspect, because I actually reached out to that company and I was like, hi, could you make a role for me? And they're like, cool, sure. So that itself didn't really have anything to do with like why they hired me. I think what stood out to me is, one, they didn't keep me, and that's when I realized that like DEI in this company just wasn't important to them. Yeah.
In my first job in tech, so I'm a career switcher. I worked in the legal industry and education before I switched into tech, and I have to say I never attended so many DEI trainings in any other industry as compared with tech. But in my first job as a junior developer, like 10 years ago at this point, I was the only female engineer on a team, small team. There was an older gentleman and a younger gentleman who worked in the office. The younger guy was another engineer. The older guy was one of the program people. His side gig was being a life coach. Side note, never trust anyone who works as a life coach. What does that even mean? Anyway, the older gentleman said, oh, come over here, G, name of the younger guy. You got to get a girlfriend. And here's how you do it. You just say these lines, just lay these lines on any woman and she'll be your girlfriend. I'm like, obviously not how it works. So G comes over to me and he immediately starts practicing the lines he just learned on me, only woman in the room. And at the time I was like, oh, but it's fine. He didn't mean any harm. But I think that's the problem, right? He didn't mean any harm. And that's when I realized, oh, we got a lot of learning to do in this industry.
So for me, not surprising, also one of the few ladies on a tech team. And I think for me, there's like 2 instances where I was painfully made aware of the fact that I was a girl in tech. One, I'm at a meeting with a coworker of mine, and we're asking we're asking questions to this other person on another team, and I'm asking technical questions directed at the guy sitting across from me, and he goes on and responds to my coworker, not directly to me. I ask the question, he responds to my coworker. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'm invisible. The other instance for me was I was managing a team of all guys, and one of the guys, one day, I'm walking around the office and he yanks at my back. He's like, I see something sticking out. What is that? It was my freaking bra. He yanked at my bra. And you know what the worst part was? I didn't even flinch. It was my male coworkers actually who said, yo, this is not cool. And they lodged a complaint against him on my behalf. So that was at least a nice story with a nice ending. So, all right, next question that we're going to be tackling, and thank you, Tim, for the lovely GIF. We're going to be talking about those DEI red flags, starting with, I think we're going to have Diana, Hazel, and Renata answering that question. So who would like to tackle it first?
I guess we'll open it.
All right.
So initially this slide said interview hell nah DEI red flags, and I started thinking about it from a very general tech perspective, and I was like, no, there are some hell nah DEI red flags in conferences, in hiring, in working on the team. And so something that I just kind of wanted to bring to light is when you're at a conference and you are the only woman in the room, or, I've actually been at a happy hour where I was the only woman of 30 guys in this entire bar, which was kind of insane to me. But yeah, conference-wise, Adriana and I were both organizers, and we made it a very big effort. Actually, our entire team made it a very big effort to make sure that, we had that DEI here. And so from a conference perspective, we want to make sure that, people who might not have the opportunities to attend have opportunities to get on sales tickets, or women can also attend. And so we had that opening where we invited more women to come at a lower rate than what was originally put. And just small things like that. But from an interview perspective, I think the craziest thing that I've experienced when I actually asked about their diversity and inclusion kind of system, I'm like, okay, so how do you actually promote it? And they're like, oh, it just naturally occurs. And I was like, oh my God. And thankfully that didn't work out. I actually went to the final round with that company, and they rejected me because I didn't have as many followers as the person who got it. So following is also another thing. I don't think that's, sure, it's great to have influencers on your team, perhaps if that's your company's goal, but just things to look out for.
For me, I feel I always ask what percentage of your leadership team is diverse, and can you provide me some statistics? And I get the answer, oh, I'll get back to you with that information. You should have that information on hand, and if you don't have a positive statistic, you should be able to say, this is our data, and we have this and this work in progress to amplify and enhance that in the future, because you should be working on that. Also, if people ask you things like, what kind of DEI strategies are you implementing on your company? Answers like, this is not a priority for us right now. It's not cool. And also, we do have ERGs is also not exactly the answer we're looking for. Yeah, big red flags. And since I have been interviewing recently, these are things that I actually heard in 2024. Big things.
When I think of DEI red flags, and I think of what really goes wrong here, it's almost to me about sort of how do you, as a company, as an industry, as an individual, interpret the purpose behind DEI? So many people treat DEI the same way that they treat, things like DevOps or other things like that, where it's just you buy a bunch of tools, you stick them in the corner, you ignore them, and then you never promote them or pay attention to them in any way, and you don't do the actual cultural transformation, you don't do the work. It's like, if a guy says, oh, I'm working on myself, and they go to therapy, and the only thing they do at therapy is they practice their stand-up routine, that they never actually get better in life. That's how so many companies approach DEI. So when I look for a company that's, doing this DEI thing. Is it a thing? Is it a gimmick? Or are you going, we need to intentionally think about building a culture of inclusion, and one aspect of it is this highly dimensional thing called DEI. Are you doing that? Or are you just putting a sticker on your website and filling it with brands?
Thank you. Okay, our next question that we'll be discussing is women hating on women, which is something so prevalent that we ladies see in our industry. And Denise and I will be addressing this. So Denise.
I spent all of last night thinking about what I wanted to say on this topic. And I think what I've settled on is there's a quote by Madeleine Albright, who was the Secretary of State, actually first woman as Secretary of State under Bill Clinton's administration. And Madeleine Albright is famous for the quote, "There's a special place in hell for women who don't help other women," or something like that. And I've heard that quote a lot over the years, and I actually have mixed feelings about it. Because for special place in hell for women specifically who don't help other women, being expected to do something or obligated to do something on the basis of your gender, an immovable characteristic, is kind of how we got into the situation in the first place. So I want to step back a bit and talk about the reasons why. I think we've all individually had experiences with other women treating us poorly, or feeling like we're not all aligned in this struggle for a more equitable future. And I've definitely had individual experiences like this, but I don't think it's because people are inherently bad or nasty or just want to be a bitch or anything like that. I think the root I don't know how sorry everyone here, the root cause, if there is a root cause, the root cause of all this is, I think, late stage capitalism, right? So when women treat each other badly or appear to be out of line, not unified in the struggle, I think this idea of, I'm just gonna get my bag and get out, fuck everybody else in the fight. I don't think that makes you a bad person necessarily. I think that this sort of struggle for scarce resources, the struggle for scarcity, is created by late stage capitalism, right? So who's ever been told, oh, we don't have budget for more than 3% salary raises this year? It's I know that you have $1.2 billion in cash reserves. You absolutely have more money than 3% for budget increases this year, but it's a choice. It's a choice made by wanting to optimize for shareholder value rather than investing in your people and investing in the long-term future of your company. So I don't know, I reflect on that quote, and I think a better way to reframe it is to realize that all of us, whether you're a man or a woman or somewhere in between, we're all workers. Right? We're all part of the worker class. We are not, probably none of us are part of the billionaire class. I don't know if anyone here is a billionaire, but if you are, let me know. No, just kidding. But as long as that's the case, I think we have an obligation to other workers. I think that's the obligation here. I don't know.
Yeah, that was so great. I think when we were brainstorming this topic yesterday, as Denise said, we could come up with tons of scenarios where we've felt undermined by other women, and it's shitty that it happens, and it's happened enough times with me, and I've had bitch bosses who are ladies, and it sucks. But I think ultimately, one of the things that we were discussing yesterday is why is that happening? And in some ways, we're almost trained to go against each other as women, right? We're pitted in a cage match against each other, where we're competing for scarce resources, we're competing for that promotion, where we're trained by society to not be kind to each other, and that's really crappy that happens. And instead, we need to take a step back and realize let's break the cycle, let's stop that from happening, right? I think the hardest thing is to and unfortunately I think I've committed the same crime of being cruel to other women in the name of competition, and so we need to just take a step back and be kinder to other women, not pit ourselves against each other. It's not a competition, and also as Denise said, we're all humans, we're all in this together. Let's make this a kinder, gentler world. Okay, so final topic that we're all going to be talking about is if you had privilege, what would you do with that privilege to make it better? Starting with Hazel.
Sorry, one more time, what was the question?
If you had privilege, what would you do with that privilege to make things better?
So if I had privilege, what would I do to make things better? So I had the privilege at one point, and then I gave it up, and I'm like, it doesn't work for me. But if I had the privilege to sort of make things better in a certain way, the thing that's really important to me is when I build a system, or when I build an environment, or when I want to improve a culture, and when I want to think about all these things, I can't do the work. I can't make a change. I have to instead build the process of building change, or build the process of approaching things. And I want to take a community, a collective, the company or the industry or the group, and get them to a point in which they can together have this very deeply intentional and self-reflective idea of how do we make it so that anyone and everyone can bring their whole authentic self to a place and enrich it with their presence. And if you can't do that, you're not really practicing DEI. So if I had all the privilege in the world and I had the ability to just genie snap my fingers, I would build a society that knew how to build environments that made people feel whole and welcome and themselves.
What led me to leadership in engineering was the feeling that I do at this point in my career, after working in technology for over 25 years, I have some level of privilege to help young people, especially young people who don't have the same level of privilege that I have, to navigate the path that I had back in the day. Things are a little bit better. They are not as terrible as they were back in the day. And I want to be able to help people to navigate the system and empower people. So while I'm not like a billionaire, like Adriana said, maybe I'm hiding my money, but while I'm not as privileged as Elon Musk, DHH, whatever, I'm trying my best. And if I had that amount of money, I would empower the people who are, give that equity that we talk so much about, instead of equality, which is not the same. Okay, just give the same level to the people who are struggling at the bottom, who are at the same point where I was when I started, to grant people the same mechanisms to rise and get at the top without struggling so fucking much as I struggled when I was at the beginning. My husband is here. He has been with me since when I started. He knows how hard it was for me, and it wasn't for him because he's a cis white man. So, yeah.
So I think for me, I definitely do recognize this privilege, and it took me a while to realize that I had it. I'm a first-generation Vietnamese American. Yeah, we're neighbors. Yeah, we're not from Toronto, or at least I'm not. And when my parents were around my age, they definitely didn't have the opportunities to go to college to the extent that I did. And I think as I got older, I started realizing that, because when you look around, it's pretty common for people to go to high school, college, and then continue on with their lives. And then just recognizing the fact that that's not normal for literally everyone. It really helped me just establish some empathy. And real quick, how many of you last year were at my talk, How to Talk to Women? Show of hands. Oh, nice. Hey. Thank you. But yeah, so after that, something that really stood out to me was when I talked to Michael Cade, in case any of you don't know him. He's cool. He's at VM, I think, or Caston. But after my talk, he actually came up to me and he was just yeah, that really stood out to me, because as a white man in tech, my wife actually holds me accountable of using my white privilege to help other people. And I was just oh my gosh, now I want to make sure that's a thing if I were to ever marry someone who had more privilege than me. So yeah.
So every day on International Women's Day for the last couple of years, I've been tweeting, Happy International Women's Day. Men, fellas, go tell your women coworkers your salary. Seriously. I think that is a very, very concrete thing you can do. Salary transparency is legally protected in most US states and all of Canada. You are allowed to share your salary with your coworkers. Managers, it makes my life a little bit difficult, a little more difficult now that I am in the management, tier, whatever. But I think it's really, really important that we talk about compensation, because that is, if you don't know what everyone else is making, you don't have the ability to advocate for yourself. So I think if you have the safety to do that, that is one concrete step I would recommend everyone do. Share your salary with your coworkers. Second thing, if you are a leader, if you are a manager, one thing that I've reflected a lot on over the last 2 years is that equity and inclusion is not some broad sweeping change. It's also not just like a set of vibes. It's like repeated, continuous small actions, right? It's the accumulation of a number of behaviors. And what it looks like day to day is, if you're a manager and you're making decisions about work allocation, instead of thinking, oh, I could just give this to Brian, I know he can definitely do it, think a little bit harder about that decision, right? Think like, could Katie do it? Could Renata do it? Could Diana do it? Because when it comes time to promote your ICs, what you're going to think about is the high-profile work that everybody else did. And so if Brian's been doing all the high-profile work because you've subconsciously been passing everything to him, that is going to make a huge difference when it comes time for formal recognition. So just take an extra beat. If you're in a position to allocate work and be responsible for the opportunities being handed to people, think a little bit extra about how you're distributing those opportunities, which this, by the way, is formal sponsorship. So we talk about coaching, mentoring, sponsorship. Allocation of opportunity when you're in a position of power, when you have that situational privilege, which is tied to your title and your position at a company. Using that situational privilege to make sure that opportunities are allocated equitably. I think that's literally our job. I think that is our obligation to the mission of diversity and inclusion and equity.
For me, I think it starts, one of the things that can be done is through mentorship, and it's not just women mentoring women, and I think that's very important as well. Like I don't think I've ever had a proper woman mentor, and I would really love to have one at some point. Someday I might. But also, I think, I think women mentoring other women, but also women mentoring men is very important, because I think when women mentor men, I feel like it kind of deprograms some of those biases, and so it allows, I think it allows men to then become kinder, gentler, and more open towards their attitudes towards women. Because let's face it, unfortunately, we have biases. As women, we have biases. As men, we have biases. It's just a fact of life. So being able to mentor folks, and I think, treating them with respect. The other thing too is, one of the things that we were discussing yesterday is the fact that, as women, we're, for me as a woman, being like one of the only women on a team for most of my career, has kind of conditioned me to discard some of my femininity, so that I could, be one of the guys, so I could be accepted, and that's not cool. So one of the things that I've learned to embrace in the last little while, and thankfully because I've had more tech women in my circle of friends, is embrace my femininity and be okay with it, and not have to hide my femininity just so I could fit in. So I think all you women out there who are hiding your femininity because you're worried that you're not going to fit in, girl it up. I mean, I was inspired by Diana last year with her talk, How to Talk to Women, and she dressed up to the nines, and she's like, it's cool to be hot and smart. So y'all ladies, it's cool to be hot and smart.
That was actually something that Leanne, where is she? Leanne had actually explicitly said this to me during the panel, and she was like, I admire your ability to be hot and smart. And I was like, you're hot and smart, but.
So, and that's it for our panel today. Well, thank you for joining us. I hope you learned something useful, and go forth and spread the love, right? DEI is, it's not just words. Let's go and do something and make this world more equal for everybody.